Ever wonder why the United States is so large? Why it's the fourth largest nation? How is the United States at war 90% of its existence? We need to start at the birth of the Republic. We'll start at a time of a small federation of states. A time where it was only the Mississippi and eastward. A time of Jefferson. Jefferson was offered to buy Louisiana off of the French. He accepted and bought the land. This was actually a loophole in the Constitution. The Constitution didn't allow direct purchasing of land. So, instead of being a purchase, the Louisiana Purchase was signed as a treaty. Something significant is that the Louisiana Purchase gave the United States a border with New Spain, which would later become Mexico. This new border started some disputes. They had another treaty, but this was not a loophole. The treaty was signed in 1819, with the United States losing some Texan lands, but gaining land from the Mississippian Panhandle to the Floridan Peninsula. This new border started some disputes. They had another treaty, but this time it was not a loophole. The treaty was signed in 1819, with the United States losing some Texan lands, but gaining land from the Mississippian Panhandle to the Florida Peninsula. Spain also had to grant rights to Americans living in Texas. This would be important later. Okay, this is cool and all, but there was a thing called the American Colonization Society. Was it successful? You could say it was. Have you ever seen this flag? This was America's only African colony. What is it called? Named after Liberty, its name is Liberia. It was founded in 1821. Why was it colonized? Americans wanted all African Americans to go to this colony. And it wasn't the South that supported this, it was actually the North who supported this. Even Lincoln didn't want African Americans in the United States. South were the ones that wanted to keep the African Americans in America for slavery. The reason we don't have it as a state today is that the United States wanted to give this colony self-sufficiency. Later, in 1847, Liberia declared independence. America had its fellow English field brother to the north, the United Kingdom. They had many disputes and tried to solve them along the northern border after the War of 1812. First of all, Upper Maine was ceded to the United States. West of the Minnesotan Panhandle, any lands north of the 49th parallel would be ceded to the United Kingdom, and southern lands to the United States. There's one exception, the Oregon country. The two Anglo nations decided to establish a condominium and joint control of territory. This was until 1846, where Oregon country was split along the same parallel as the previous treaty. Okay, remember when I mentioned Spain gave rights to Americans living in Texas? 2 years later, Mexico gained independence. This was a big chunk of New Spain. It stretched all the way from the northern border of California and stretched all the way down to Yucatan. Anyway, Mexico taking away the rights of all of the Americans in Texas. Mexico also closed its border with America. Sounds familiar? Anyway, as you can probably figure out, the Americans didn't want the rights taken. Taking an idea from the United States, the Americans revolted. They won, surprisingly enough. They formed the Republic of Texas. They wanted to be annexed to the United States, but the president knew that it would start a war with Mexico. And a decade later, James K. Polk, president of the United States, decided to annex Texas. Why? He knew it would start a war with Mexico. Polk wanted a war with Mexico, who wanted tons of its land. Polk got what he wanted and was at war with Mexico. After the war, the United States gained Alta California, Nuevo Mexico, and all Texan claimed lands. Later, the Mexicans would sell northern Sonora, sometimes referred to as Tuxpan, after the city, to the United States, which is known as the Gadsden Purchase. Now we skip a small conflict, sometimes referred to as the American Civil War. Wait. And now we get to this flag. Looks Slavic, right? That's because it's Russian America. Russia wanted to sell this to someone. There were two people they could sell it to the United Kingdom or to the United States. The United States bought it. Why? Andrew Johnson wanted to pressure the United States to give British Columbia to the United States. Did this succeed? No, but it turned out to be a real hotspot after the Second World War. Then there's Spain. Spain has a special relationship with America. We don't like each other, but then the USS Maine. Spain was blamed for sinking the USS Maine, and not going into detail, the United States occupied many Spanish colonies, like Puerto Rico and Cuba, but the United States was looking west, in the Pacific. So the Philippines and Guam. But there was one problem. They didn't have anywhere they could occupy these. Not any close ports, not anything. So, the annexation of some islands. These were called the Sandwich Islands. This might be Hawaii later, but don't worry about it. And there's some treaties later, and the Philippines gained Puerto Rico-like status. So did Puerto Rico. Cuba was occupied by America, but later liberated. And this would hit them later, obviously. And Guam became an island territory of the United States. So, this is it, right? Actually, there's some island territories gained later on. Firstly, the Virgin Islands, which were bought by France, the UK, and the US from Denmark. This was during the Great War. There was a short period during World War II where the United States occupied Greenland. This was, of course, returned back to Denmark, and they remain a Danish colony today, though with some autonomy. Then, after World War II, the United States gained the Marshall Islands. During the Cold War, the United States lost some Pacific territories, like the Philippines, Guam, Marshall Islands, Line Islands, and some other islands are relatively important. And that's it. This part where I include a conclusion and cut time.